Right, switch to emulation. Is it happening? Is it all hype? Let's talk about the recent hack that's happened in 24 hours. And I'll give you a perspective from a data scientist, and I will explain why I think the switch to will be hacked relatively soon. So why is switch to emulation such a big topic right now? Although Nintendo is amazing, it's an amazing company, nobody can deny that. From the games they introduced to the IPs they own, it's just amazing. However, they have been annoying and borderline abusing their audience, despite sales and records numbers, because people are willing to pay high prices for their products and services. The issue is now they have gone off the deep end. Examples include overcharging for the console, overcharging for games, charging the audience for a demo, and this one has annoyed across the board. They reserve the right to brick your console. That means that theoretically you don't own your console. They can reach into your console and brick it at the justifications that they want, which is quite terrifying in many different aspects. To top it all off, having the tagline that this console is impenetrable, it is unhackable. Well, what I will say to that is, hold my Pro controller, because 24 hours later, there was a Userland exploit found and it was brought to the public, which we'll get into. Don't you just love these big fancy taglines? Minor hack found on top of OS. Okay, let's just cut through the crap and actually see what's going on here. What's happened here is that what's been found within 24 hours, hence, Nintendo Switch are not impenetrable, is that there's been a Userland exploit found. And this has enabled the user and run basically what looks like some sort of low resolution video on top of the Nintendo Switch. Now, understand, and I'll get into this, understand there are many levels to hacking a system, including Userland, kernel, and obviously things like actually modifying the circuit board. This is step one to hacking. It always starts with some sort of Userland exploit in general. And the fact that this has been found within 24 hours just screams motivation. By the way, just a quick little segment. I am referencing this particular video. Go watch this guy's video. He explains cybersecurity concepts way better than I am. The whole point of this video is why I'm confident it's going to be hacked is because of all the AI implementations to actually get the device hacked, in my personal opinion. Also, this code here is a simple if statement and then a function. I'm not too sure if he can elaborate. I'm not too sure why he's even included this code. Is it just for visual stimuli? I have no idea, but go watch this guy's video. So let's begin. I've taken the framework from that video and I've basically adapted it to make my own. And what I'm going to do now is basically explain each stage of the hacking process, but I'm going to give you a high level overview, not go into so much intricate detail, because to be honest, unless you're actually trying to penetrate the system yourself for whatever reason, then it's basically irrelevant. This will give you a general understanding, what timeframes, and we can clear up a lot of confusion because people have just run with this hacking buzzword. One thing I do want to clear up though, and I'm not promoting, by the way, disclaimer, I'm not promoting any sort of piracy, anything. This is for strictly educational purposes because I genuinely find this fascinating. One other thing I will say, if you are looking to quote unquote emulate the system in the future or hack the system, then just make sure not to update your firmware, because updating your firmware comes with patches and these exploits found along the way do get cleared up by Nintendo. Why is it we can't just, manipulate with the circuit board, etc.? Theoretically, they used to mess with the voltage, but the issue is if the device detects any sort of voltage change, then unfortunately it will lead to an instant bricking of the device. So let's get to the fun bit. Let's understand the roadmap of this getting hacked, okay? So understand, in the world of hacking, there are two worlds. There's the normal world and then the secure world. Think of this like in Zelda Twilight Princess, the normal world, the Twilight Zone, or in the Wisdom world, you have the Muggles and then the Wisdom world. That's all you need to understand, okay? Now, in our normal world, there's two sections. There's the user, known as the Userland. There's the user, known as the Userland, which is here. And then you also have the user kernel. So they're the two stages, okay? And then in the secure world, you have obviously the parallel. So you have the secure user, and then you'll have the secure kernel. And then right at the bottom, and this is more like the cross zone, the portal, if you want to call it that, this is called the monitor. If you have access to the monitor, by definition, you have access to the full device. The place you actually want to get to is this place, the secure kernel. Inside the secure kernel, you have all the keys, the DRM, the signature process, everything. This is where the real emulation and the hack actually happens. Now, as I explained before, another way that they usually tamper with the device is by manipulating the voltage, etc., etc. However, unfortunately, as explained before, Nintendo have implemented the secure mechanism where if you tamper with the voltage, it's an instant shutdown of the building. Where has this hacker managed to get into? Let's explain this and clear up this confusion. So when you do watch videos in the future of people saying it's being hacked, you know better, right? So the user has entered the Userland. Now, the common practices deployed for the Userland exploit is as follows. What tends to happen is you can get on the system and you can access other softwares. Fine. And this is why if you download pirated softwares, etc., you do need to check them for vulnerabilities, because theoretically, if a hacker gets into one of these softwares and manage to inject, and this is the key point, inject their own code, then by definition, they can take over, from a Userland perspective, the entire room. However, this hacker has managed to access the shared library. Now, a shared library is common in any sort of device, because shared libraries, for example, if you know anything about web development or app development, for example, a framework like React.js, you'll have a toolkit, and these toolkits are used by developers, etc. So what he's done, he's managed to find a flaw in this toolkit, in this code that is accessed by multiple people in the future. The reason why it's basically a big nothing burger is because he's not managed to actually inject his own code. He's managed to manipulate the code on the device. So he's taken Nintendo's own code and basically reformatted it to get his desired result. So he's basically done jujitsu with the code instead of injecting his own code. But from my research, you have to be able to inject your own code into this section of the roadmap to have full access to that room. Now, the trajectory looks like this. Once you have full Userland access, which at this stage we don't, you will then move on to the user kernel. Now, this is by analyzing all the drivers, analyzing some sort of flaw inside the drivers. And what you want access to is all the components. So think of this like stage 1 is like a room takeover, and stage 2 is a full-blown house takeover. We want all the rooms. We want the Wi-Fi. We want the screen. We want to be able to change the resolution of the screen, blah, 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 right? And this is done by exploiting one of the drivers, okay? So that's stage 2. Now, stage 3. Now, keep in mind, though, hacking the secure user is irrelevant for now, because the common progression is Userland, user kernel. And what we want now is 2 methods. We can either go inside the user kernel through some sort of backdoor or whatever, or we can take that, or we can go directly to the front door, and this is called the monitor. But the issue is with the monitor, there's always a gatekeeper. I don't know what drone that was, but there's a gatekeeper at the front door. If you manage to get through the gatekeeper, you can then have access to basically the entire thing. And you can get to the user kernel and get to the simple hack. In my personal opinion, what does this mean for the emulation world? It means that Nintendo isn't impenetrable. What I think is this. I think they spent so much time on these big pieces that they kind of just forgot or overlooked the small pieces. But I don't think it can be hacked, not without AI anyway. And this is my point. In order to be able to inject code into the Userland, I honestly believe it's going to require a deployment of some sort of architecture from the data science world, i.e. AI. It's going to need some sort of transformer model, or it's going to need I reckon some sort of CNN, convolutional neural network. It's going to need to really check the entire device from head to toe for any sort of errors or vulnerabilities in the code. If I'm honest, I think the voltage thing can be bypassed. I don't think that that's impenetrable. I really don't think it, because theoretically speaking, if you manipulate the voltage, fine, the voltage changes, but that needs to tell the system a voltage has changed. A device, an electronic device, whether it's your PC, whether it's a Game Boy, whether it's a PSP, whether it's a Nintendo Switch, whatever it is, it's not psychic, right? It can't be like, oh, I seen you change the voltage. No, the voltage needs to hit a mechanism where it tells the switch that crap, there's been a voltage change. So what someone needs to do is make sure that signal, that communication is blocked. And that's how, theoretically, in my opinion, to get around it. Whether AI is needed for that, I'm not too sure, but definitely for injecting all this code, I think AI is needed, because unless someone has some savvy way to get through the software and penetrate it to be able to inject their own code, I don't think we're there. The time frame I give for the Nintendo Switch 2 to be hacked is 12 to 18 months. I reckon about 3 to 6 months to get code into the userland, and then to penetrate the user kernel, I think a further like 3 to 6 months from there. So let's say 12 months. And then I reckon sometime in 2026, 2027, I do reckon we will get a secure kernel takedown. Right, if you liked the video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out my previous video on emulation on the RTX 5080. And yeah, that's it for today. Until next time, until next episode, I will speak to you soon. Take care and have a beautiful, blessed day.